now. Oh, there you go, I can see everyone coming in. Oh, hi everyone, welcome to this evening's session of the wonderful Food Power Festival. I'm really excited to see so many of you joining us today. My name's Pearl and I work for Food Sense Wales. I support Cardiff's local food alliance and Sustainable Food Place Food Cardiff. And I also work across Wales as one of the Food Power peer mentors. So I'm going to be your chair for this evening. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. Just the usual things around staying muted unless you're talking. Please do make use of the chat box to share your thoughts, questions and ideas. I'm sure there'll be lots to discuss. And just a reminder that this session is being recorded. So if you don't want to have your face shown, just make sure to turn your camera off if you want to be involved but not feature. So this session is called Bridging the Gap Through Alternative Retail Models. I thought I'd start us off by actually talking a little bit about what these alternative retail models are. We'll hear a lot about this from our speakers later anyway, but community food retail or alternative retail encompasses such a huge variety of different projects, such as social supermarkets, food co-ops, local pantries and fruit and veg schemes, but they often have common themes. For example, food being purchased rather than giving food away, making this quite different from a food bank model or other sorts of emergency food aid. And secondly, people having some form of involvement or ownership into the project. For example, people might be members or they might be sort of co-designing and leading the projects as well, which makes this different then from a standard shop or supermarket or convenience store. And we've got some really incredible examples of these projects with us today, who are going to have a little 5-minute slot to give an overview of the projects. And we'll then have a Q&A, so please do pop questions in the chat throughout and I'll keep an eye on those and we can ask our speakers some questions afterwards. And then we'll head into breakout groups, so you've got a chance to discuss further in smaller groups as well. So we're going to hear first from Jo Wilson from Women's Environment Network in Tower Hamlets. We've then got Alex Britton, followed by Helen Starr-Keddle, and then Naomi Maynard and Alina Vaca. So yeah, I guess without further ado, to hand over to Jo to talk about your work.
Okay, thanks, Pearl. I'm just going to share my screen, hopefully, and set my timer because 5 minutes isn't very long. Okay, so yeah, as Pearl says, I work for WEN, Women's Environmental Network. We're a charity working on the intersection of climate and social justice, and we're the lead organisation of the Tower Hamlets Food Partnership. So we established that alongside the council in 2018, following a recommendation in the Food Poverty Action Plan. So we work on 4 areas that broadly encompass the Sustainable Food Place's 6 areas. And I think one of the areas that still has the most momentum is our work on food insecurity and resilience. That probably is down to where our partnership began. And we have an action group called Fair Food for All, which is all about this agenda. And getting pantries, community food pantries into Tower Hamlets has been it's been a key goal of the group from the start, from our first meeting, which was in May 2019. And just to say, in 2020, so during lockdown, we developed 6 principles for a just and sustainable food recovery. and those continue to sort of inform the work that we're doing around food pantry. So one of the things is about diversifying sources of food in community food projects. We think that's important to increase resilience, to support local businesses, and also to champion environmentally sustainable, culturally appropriate, ethical and nutritious options. And we also think it's important to build the capacity of our community and voluntary sector organisations. So that's just a bit of a kind of preface to our pantry. So we actually have 5 pantries in Tower Hamlets now. We've gone from 0 to 5 in about 3 months between the end of last year and around March. But the one I'm talking about is the sort of is kind of our flagship food partnership project, and it's the one that was commissioned by the council. So it's on a housing estate in Poplar, which is in Tower Hamlets, on an estate that's owned and managed by Poplar Harker. So they've provided the venue, commissioned by the council. They put some setup costs to it, and it's run by a local organisation, Burda FC. Not usually known for doing food projects, but it's quite exciting that they are doing it. They are a genuine community organisation, and they were a big part of the mutual aid network, and so have been really driven and sort of motivated to do this work and continue to do it. And the food partnership also have supported the project in an advisory capacity, but also we did put some funding in it towards it from Food Power. So not going to say too much about this, but it is a sort of typical community pantry model. It's a referral service. We have about 70 members. They pay about £3.50 membership fee per week, and they get 10 to 15 pounds worth of food for that each week. And at the same time, they are offered various welfare support, wraparound services around debt, money management, employment support, health and wellbeing. So onto the food. The sources of food we are diversifying them as we can. So a lot of the food comes from the London Food Alliance, and through the council's food hub has continued to run a food hub for community food organisations since COVID. We also get food from local retailers and wholesalers as much as possible, and then there are corporate and donations from corporations and also from the public on top of that. So one of the things that the food partnership and Wen felt we really wanted to contribute to was thinking about that culturally appropriate food and nutritious food. So we've a lot of the funding that we provided went directly towards bulk purchasing, a lot of grains, pulses and spices. I mean, these photos are really not very good. They're my photos, but it's just to say that we keep that area sort of as stocked as we can. And it's really, really popular. There is some organic produce available, not always as much as we would like, but you know, it's a difficult thing on a shoestring. But users' opinion of the food is steadily rising. We've as it's evaluated each month. So alongside that, there are lots of other things that we want to do. So we actually have a community garden and kitchen alongside. And we are developing a community food hub. So as well as these current services, we're hoping to be able to offer people opportunities to grow, cook and eat food as well, and to really, you know, provide all sorts of other things alongside the shop. And
thank you, Jo.
Okay, thanks. Continuing to improve the offer. It's been 6 months and it's a difficult thing but it's a continuous improvement. So there you go.
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant to hear. And I've been given strict instructions to keep everyone to 5 minutes. So I'm so sorry for cutting off. But please do ask any questions in the chat box, and we'll have time to come back to Jo in a minute anyway. So now I'd like to hand over to I think it's Alex next, who's going to talk a bit about food co-ops in Islington.
Hi everyone. Hopefully you can all see this. So yeah, my name's Alex. I'm the chair of Islington Food Poverty Alliance, and I work at Manor Gardens. So I just want to talk a little bit about our food cooperative network pilot that we've been running in the past few months. So as you can see on this slide, we had 7 different pilot cooperatives running across the borough, which is kindly supported by a Sustain grant. And we chose, each kind of community organisation chose a slightly different model for their food co-op, as you can see, to kind of test and trial what works best across the borough. But each of them, as was said at the beginning, kind of run on a membership model and a payment model, and often worked with people that were previously using food banks and other kind of free services. So to give you an overview of what our kind of shared goals were, so number 1, it was for us to provide affordable food to families that were experiencing food poverty, so basically undercut what they could get at local shops. But also alongside this, to kind of use it as a way to introduce people to cooperative models more broadly, and potentially support people to set up their own kind of self-sustaining resident-led buying clubs as another approach to introducing co-ops. So we're actually in the process of writing a kind of key learnings and insights guide that should be published in the next few weeks. There's obviously loads more in there than I can talk about in 5 minutes, but just wanted to give you a bit of a kind of quick hit list of what we learnt. One of the key things was that, as I said, our main goal was to kind of try and undercut local food shops. And actually, we did find that when we were going to wholesalers, it is quite difficult to undercut products in a lot of areas. So you need to kind of pick and choose what products you are able to get at a much cheaper price through a wholesaler. And actually our ability to provide that affordable food was mainly supported by surplus food, so from places like Felix Project and Fair Share. But there's obviously lots of other goals around food cooperatives, so people might be interested in kind of getting better quality food for the same price. One of our pop-up shops run by Choices was focused on culturally specific food for our local Afro-Caribbean communities that couldn't access those products easily. But obviously there's lots of other things around kind of sourcing ethical and local through your supply chain, and establishing kind of community networks through a cooperative. In terms of kind of audience, we had a targeted audience, as we said, sort of just people experiencing food poverty. But, you know, with a broader audience, you could have a different model where you maybe were kind of serving in a shop and you could have tiered pricing, is something that we're looking at exploring for people that have more disposable income but are interested in being part of the cooperative. And as I said, kind of mainly through necessity, because this was set up in unexpected at the time lockdown, we have kind of had these co-ops led by organisations mainly, but now we're coming out of lockdown, we are really wanting to encourage people to run their own cooperatives as part of kind of their neighbours or parents at the school, whoever those groups might be. Just to give a bit of an overview of the kind of costs and funding that we had. So we had about £2,500 for each project to start this up. And this is a list of our key costs. And in that guide that we're writing, we have kind of break that down in terms of what we spent, and also how we think you could do it on a much more of a shoestring if you didn't quite have that amount of money as well. In terms of our pricing and membership, we operated on a £3 a week basis, and some organisations had a kind of £5 a week for a larger family membership price as well. And we also kind of talked through the different regulations and legal requirements that we needed to consider when we were developing them. But I also just highly recommend Sustain's Food Co-op Toolkit for this, because we definitely lent really heavily on that toolkit in order to develop everything that we did. So in terms of kind of next steps, most of those pilots are continuing on with the self-sustaining financial model, which is really, really great. And they've managed to kind of make it work and pay for itself. We're also expanding our outreach to those resident-led buying groups, as I said, and working with Cooperation Town, which I'm sure some people have heard, and using their model for that. The success of the pilots has meant that we've been able to speak to Islington Council about potentially taking on community assets to run kind of full-time shops in our busiest areas, which is a really exciting development. And as I said, yeah, we're publishing that full guide soon. So I've put my contact details here in the website if you're interested to hear more. I've also got Diane Marshall from Newington Green Action Group here as well for the breakout rooms from one of our pilots. So happy to talk more.
Thanks so much, Alex. Really inspiring, really exciting stuff to hear about. And so I will hand over to Helen, you're next, aren't you? To talk about the work in Brighton. Brilliant, thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone. Hi, yeah, my name's Helen Starkettle, and I'm here today to talk to you about alternative retail models. I'm from Brighton and Hove Food Partnership. We got lottery funding to support 7 pilots. We had a bit of an issue trying to figure out some names. So now we've got 2 hubs, 1 market, 1 pantry, 1 shop and a store. And collectively, we're calling them affordable food schemes, which definitely isn't very catchy. But we've got about 300 households that we're supporting. Please excuse my hand-drawn drawing. This will be made into a fancy infographic, but not in time for this presentation. So each of the neighbourhoods has done a different project depending on their own community, sort of what their community can afford. We're working collectively together to share skills, network, and combine purchasing power, because each of the projects is a membership scheme, so people are paying in. The sort of collective money that we're gathering is used to buy food from Brighton Food Factory. Brighton Food Factory is a social enterprise that collects from local regenerative sustainable farms and sells to restaurants, and uses that to subsidise distributing to affordable food schemes at cost. We're also getting food from surplus, so Fair Share Sussex provides the main bulk of the food that's given out, and that's what kind of makes it a reasonable amount of food. And we're also getting other donations from other organisations in our surplus food network. We also get local food businesses that donate, and sometimes produce from community food growing. So Brighton and Hove Food Partnership is providing kind of networking support and development advice for each of the organisations. And we're also getting support from Brighton and Hove City Council with funding and premises. So I'm just going to talk about one of them because I don't have time to talk about them all, but Bright Store is a membership scheme. People pay either £4 for a small, which is for 1 or 2 people, or £6 for a large. It's roughly about £20 worth of food, but they have people that can pay some more. So they're called Extra Bright Solidarity members, and they pay £6 or £8. And because of this, that means that they can also give free places, so they can still take referrals for people that need emergency food, although it is open access, so absolutely anyone can join. They have 2 schemes, which are about 90 members, and they're currently sourcing from food from Fair Share, Brighton Food Factory, but they're also getting bread from a lovely organisation called Flower Pot, which is sort of lovely loaves of bread. They did have eggs in their original kind of membership model, but then eggs suddenly got really much more expensive around Brighton. So now they ask people to pay extra for the eggs. And we've been talking a lot about potentially doing this for other high value products like cheese and things like that, if people can pay extra. This model works because it's entirely volunteer run, so that their income is what they're spending on food. However, they do need to think about having some staff capacity within it to expand. So that's something they're going to have to consider in future. The sort of challenges we've had across the affordable food schemes, the unpredictability of surplus. There's a lot less surplus now. Surplus isn't necessarily healthy and nutritious, or when things are in season, that's also the cheap food that you can buy in. We're also never going to beat the supermarkets on price, so we just can't really do that. This is about supporting local farmers. That's a really important part of this, that farmers don't take a cut because of the products that we're getting. There's also kind of tensions between what we can buy in terms of what's more ethical or what's more affordable for the people that need cheaper food, and the kind of financial sustainability of each of the projects. Obviously, like I said, that some of them really want to have some staff capacity, but it doesn't necessarily work in terms of their modelling. And a lot of the projects are currently reliant on grant schemes because they want to provide more food from their members. We've just done a really big evaluation of the schemes. That report will be available fairly soon. From this, we know that 74% of members said that they can eat better within their budget. 60% of members are eating more veg, which is really fantastic. 74% of members feel more connected to their community, which is amazing considering it was locked down. We also know that the people that we're reaching, some really interesting findings, like 25% of the people we're reaching are employed in some way, so that's interesting about long-term food insecurity. And 68% are in social council housing, and 25% of people have moved on from a food bank. which we know 100% of those said that this is a nicer experience for them. So that's really interesting. I'm going to leave you with some lovely quotes that the members have said, which I think really illustrate the benefits of these schemes. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. That's great. You've got about 5 seconds left, so perfectly timed, and lovely to end on those quotes as well. Thanks so much, Helen. And last but not at all least, we've got Naomi and Eleanor. Just a reminder, I've seen a few questions come through in the chat, so please do add any others because we'll have some time to ask questions afterwards as well. But now over to you, Naomi and Eleanor.
Fantastic. Hello everyone. Can you see the screen? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, perfect. So I am Eleanor. I am the Community Food Officer at Foundation Stockport and work on behalf of Stockport Homes Group as well as Church Action on Poverty. I just thought I'd give you a bit of an overview of what your local pantry is. We've got essentially a network of volunteer-run affordable food stores across the UK. They operate on a membership scheme, so it's part of a membership club that people feel part of. It's open to all, so we don't ask for any income criteria, which is quite different to other food provisions. We charge a small weekly fee for around 10 items, which is an average of £20 per basket, aiming to help members save money on their grocery bills. We provide lots of good quality, fresh and chilled produce as well, mainly supplied by Fair Share, but all the local supermarkets also donate. The pantries offer a lot of choice and dignity whilst also tackling social isolation. So we often have community kind of afternoon and coffee mornings and community cafes running alongside. We also have lots of different options and opportunities for volunteers who are members of their local pantry and their local community. And we also signpost other support services such as money advice, mental health charities and also social work. So the pantry started back in 2013 with Foundation Stockport essentially setting them up in response to welfare reform. We wanted the pantries to have a big impact on the local community, providing a food resource, but also help with financial things for the community members. We also offer volunteering opportunities, so members can become volunteers and then gain employment and also housing, whilst maintaining that dignity and choice and building community relationships. Following a large amount of interest back in 2017, which feels a lifetime ago, other organisations recognised that they could benefit from kind of our partnership. So we partnered with Church Action on Poverty, and this partnership has developed the pantry idea into a franchise with lots of different organisations wanting to set up and become pantry schemes across the UK. I'll pass on to Naomi now.
Hello, I'm Naomi. I'm a researcher who's been involved in the impact report for your local pantry, but I'm also a member and a volunteer at a pantry in Liverpool. So as the network has grown, a whole host of partner organisations that you can see on the screen have joined to spread it across the UK. So there are now 50 pantries in Scotland, Wales and England. They can be found in community centres, schools, churches, housing associations and high street shops. Being connected within a network has enabled smaller organisations to start a pantry with support from the partners. It's enabled us to pilot new innovations and share learning between each other and build a clear case about the impact pantries are having on communities by assessing our impact together. So this year, we published our second social impact report, Dignity, Choice, Hope. We surveyed and interviewed members across the network. So the financial benefits of being a member were clear. Members spoke about pantry easing the pressure on finances and explained that the money they used, the money that they'd saved through being a member, they used to do things like reduce debts, buy more or better quality food, save, pay utility bills or afford items which might be treat items such as enrolling a child in a football club or having a day out. We also found that the double whammy of having more spare cash to spend on healthy food and pantries themselves stocking fresh products meant that if we had 100 members in our pantry, 54 would be saying they now eat more fresh fruit and vegetables. We found that 36% reported what we call big changes to their diet. So that means they're eating more fresh fruit and veg and less processed food. And for 44% of members said that being a member means they now just eat more food. We heard stories of parents no longer needing to skip meals. There's just now more food on the table. We found that pantries are playing a key role in strengthening local communities, both through being spaces where people from the same area come together and meet regularly, where they make new friends across different generations, but also places that strengthen local economies. Members described it as shopping local, with some pantries specifically reinvesting membership fees to buy from local suppliers. The final finding I wanted to highlight, should be on the next slide, is centres around dignity. Several members told us how being a pantry member was a source of pride. Anecdotally, we know that some members in some of our places have needed to use food banks in the past. They made it clear that pantry membership was something different. They have paid for and chosen the food that they know their family needs that week. There isn't a stigma attached to being a member, as everyone uses it. They haven't needed to be referred or deemed in need. And there's a pride in playing a part in tackling food waste, with something like 96% of members said tackling food waste was important to them. They also were proud to be part of a community that is member-led. So instead of being framed as food aid, pantries were described as members as more like cooperatives, whereas one member at Smethwick Pantries described it as, we all pool our resources together to enable us to get good food.
Thank you so much, Naomi and Eleanor. Another really interesting talk. We've, I think in the last 20 minutes, just covered so much, and hopefully everyone's feeling quite inspired and interested to find out more. That actually follows on nicely to one of the questions that we had, which was around, I think it was directed to Helen, but it was, do members get to select their own food? So Naomi, you've sort of covered that already. I wonder if Helen, you could come in, and then Alex, and then Jo.
Well, the answer is yes. I mean, I think that's definitely one of the things that is really, really important, that members get to select what they want, because every single person has an entirely different diet and might like different things. Most of them are set up a bit like a market, where you would come in and you go through the market stall and you might be able to choose different items. However, some of that did change slightly during some periods of lockdown, and I know that some of the groups felt that it was easier to have a selected parcel, if you like, that could be given to people, so that people weren't touching things and stuff like that. But they've all moved back to models where everyone can select what they want now.
And what about you, Alex?
Yeah, so it differed across our 7 different pilots. So some of them operated more as bag and box scheme, and so it was just kind of, you know, you had your weekly bag. For us at Manor Gardens, we operated as more of a shop, as did others. So people were able to choose. We had a hybrid model at ours where we had the wholesale food that people could buy at wholesale prices, and then we also had the free surplus food that people could take a certain weight, depending on how much we had that week.
Thank you. And Jo?
Yeah, same sort of thing. The food store is made to look as much like a shop as possible. So even though it's a housing estate asset, there's shelving and, you know, fridge areas, and there's a route. Because of COVID, there is a specific route that you go through, but, you know, you see kind of similar kind of like you would see in a supermarket, kind of different aisles with different types of food. And the fruit and veg, a lot of that is outside, and that's free of charge as well, which is really good. So everything else you're paying, and you can see how much things cost, but the fruit and veg is always free.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions come in. I'm gonna group 2 of them together. And so we've got one, which is, are food pantries, food hubs able to do anything to help people move out of poverty? And what does that look like? And then there was another question that's a little bit similar in terms of, should pantries restrict to people just in financial need, or can anyone come? And I wonder if Alex, you can start us off in terms of the food co-op model, and then whoever wants to come in next, give me a wave.
Yeah, so we've got a few different ways that we do support people and kind of wraparound support, and I think others talked about kind of whether that's advice services. We've got kind of grant schemes as well that people are able to access, all made a lot harder with lockdown. So out of lockdown, we're going to have many more kind of drop-ins, people that those that come to the co-op can meet and talk to. Yeah, those are the main ways that we do that. And in terms of the kind of restricted to people in financial need or anyone, I mean, I've got lots to say on that and not too much time, but it depends on your capacity and your model, I suppose. So as I said, you could easily explore having kind of bigger capacity, which means venue and volunteer time or member time, however you lead it. And maybe having a tiered pricing system. We had loads of people from the borough that were really interested in being a part of it and paying higher prices. We just didn't have the capacity to be able to serve that amount of people. We wanted to restrict it. So it's those types of considerations, I think, and I think both are very possible.
Thanks, Alex. And I think Naomi wanted to answer as well.
Yeah, yes, definitely. We do signposting at the pantries. We also, in some of them, have debt advisors and other kind of people in-house. But also what we do is offer volunteering, which could lead to employment opportunities through the pantries. And if you visit a pantry each week, you can make a massive saving. The impact report, it was £780 a year. So if you're a household that's living on the breadline, that's a massive amount to be saving over the course of a year, which might enable you to cope better with a financial shock and hopefully build up and save some of that money, which will help you going forward. So yes, anybody can be a member of our pantries. It's based on geographical area. I'm a member. I'm not someone who needs some of the financial benefits, but I love playing a part in tackling food waste and being side by side with members for whom they do need some of the financial benefits more.
Sorry, I think as well, with Naomi's comments, I think the whole point with the pantries is that there shouldn't be any stigma attached to using the pantries. So that's why we don't strictly say it's only for people that have, their own benefits, for example. And we just want to welcome kind of anybody, like Naomi said, in that area, instead of having that stigma kind of criteria attached.
Thanks, Anna. Jo, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, the pantry I was talking about is very much, people are referred, people are very much encouraged to take part in particular services that they are advised to go to, and the welfare person who's there is an employed, advisor. We also encourage people to find out more about Healthy Start vouchers, and they've done a bit of a pilot with the council on that. I think that's one of the really good things about the connection with the council, is that actually, making sure that we make the most of all these other things that the council is championing around moving people out of poverty. And in terms of whether food pantries are just for people in need, well, that one very much, that is the case. But we're very excited about to be able to offer these other sorts of services and activities for the people who are using the pantry, that are much more about sort of bringing people together and sharing and cooking and eating good food, and it not just being about the using the pantry, but hopefully the pantry being set up as it is means that people don't feel sort of stigmatized as they would do to go to a pantry, to go to a food bank. And other pantries that we have, we have slightly different models. So we have got a couple where you just need to live or work within 15 minutes walk of them. So it's a completely different setup. And what we really need to do is bring all these ideas, bring all these models together and really monitor them, really understand their business plans, and then think about what we want to do to kind of increase and provide more pantries and the right sorts of services across Town Hamlets.
Thanks, Jo. Loads of questions coming in. This is all great. I'm going to throw a couple of them out to the audience to answer in the chat. There was one from Robin around Alex's point about sourcing significantly cheaper food through wholesalers, you didn't find that necessarily possible in London, but has anyone else had any other experience in other areas? And then also, if anyone in the audience has any, could answer this one in terms of examples in a more rural setting rather than an urban one. And I will, so I'm cheating a little bit and throwing them out back to you. That I was wondering, Helen, whether you could pick up on, Pip asked whether there's a model where higher prices from people who can afford it could subsidise those who can't. And the one about surplus food reducing in availability, how have successful models managed to make up the gap in supply? And I think we've got 1 minute left, so I'm going to give you that big question, Helen, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few kind of pay it forward schemes in the city. One of them, which is Florence Road Market, they actually charge their sort of richer customers. They do a normal sort of veg box scheme. They pretty much double, I mean, not quite double, but it's quite a whack on top of it for people that can afford it, because we have got quite a few more affluent people in the city that can afford to pay more. So I think it is a really good model of trying to, where possible, pay it forward. And as I explained in the presentation, even within the scheme, some people are encouraged to pay it forward, and people that kind of really works for people, because a lot of people like to give back to their community, and maybe one week they are feeling more flush than they might be another week, and they might want to give back. So I think that is a really good idea for future models. In terms of the surplus food, it is so hard, and I don't think that there is a right answer. It's sort of, even from day to day, different surpluses come in, and we've gone backwards and forwards with FareShare saying, please let us know in advance if you know that something's coming in, so we won't buy a whole load of apples or something like that. But inevitably they just can't do that in advance. So I think it's, anything, we encourage people to let other people know in the network, if they're seeing a particular surplus in anything. But basically what we're doing is having stuff in storage, so where possible, bulk purchasing and having things that are available, dry goods and things like that are available week on week, and then purchasing food sort of on a weekly basis to kind of supplement what else is coming in through surplus.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, lots of questions and things that are challenges that we can explore, and solutions that I'm sure the network has. And perhaps we can talk about these a bit more in the breakout rooms as well. So I believe, Cecily, I don't know if you've done it already, but there should be some questions going into the chat. You're going to be randomly assigned a little group of people to meet. There won't be a formal facilitator, so if you can just sort of introduce yourself and then have a bit of a chat around the questions. And then we'll reconvene here in about 15 or 20 minutes, I think. But thank you again to all our speakers. Really, really great insights. And there, yeah, it's in the chat. Thank you, Cecily. We've already got answers coming up. Amazing. One piece of advice on developing an alternative retail model. Keeping overhead costs as low as possible, ensuring culturally appropriate items are on offer, really important. Collaborating with local businesses and other pantries in the area to look at collective buying, and similarly building up your networks. Partnership working, getting your community involved as much as you can. Keep it simple, I like that as well. That's a nice example of some of the co-ops of like keeping things small to begin with, and I think the pantries have done the similar thing where you start off with a smaller membership and go from there, rather than, oh, there we go, start small and scale if you can, finding out what people want, need, links with getting the community involved as much as possible. A really important one I can see the top of looking after yourself and your staff and volunteers. It's really important that everyone involved looks after yourself as well. Making the healthy choice the easy choice, and that's a really nice piece of advice as well. especially when you're dealing with lots of food that you can't always control all the foods that comes. So yeah, and again, partnering with others, lots of really good suggestions here. Do we have another question, Cecily, or was it just the two?
No, that's it.
That's it, and I've just seen the time as well. So we've got coming up a very exciting cook along. I think the details are on the programme. If anyone's joining that, please do. It looks really delicious. And just to say thank you again to all our speakers. You've been fantastic. Thank you, Cecily and the Food Power team, for sorting out all of the tech and bringing all of this together. And thank you to all of you as well for taking part.